Welcome to an interesting conversation just now about the supply chain topics, the most important challenges. I think all of us, as mentioned, we have worked with challenges over the last month and years. So perhaps just to recap, Jatima, what do you think are the most important topics from your side that you would see as the most important challenges for the time being?
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge is in the supply chain. One parameter is the transparency thing. I think the supply chains needs to be more transparent. Number one point. Second is when you when a company is in the value chain, when people are a part of this value chain, collaboration is what is the need of the hour. It should be a collaborative process. It shouldn't happen this way, that suppose I am a big Fortune 500 firm and I am outsourcing it to my suppliers, but I don't know how their processes are. So in this value stream, I think it should be a collaborate, it should be a partnership rather than only on a contractual basis. That shouldn't work. So it's more of a collaborative, so that I can understand the pain of the suppliers and they can understand our needs. It's more of a, both of the hands are in total synchronization. The left hand should know what the right hand is doing, and vice versa. So that is one of it. And I mean, we should focus on that actually. And also I think, as I was emphasizing, and there can be manufacturing bottlenecks. Okay, I mean, obviously there can be scenarios where the workers couldn't produce because they're sick, and so the need of the hour is to be automated. At least try it. I mean, it cannot be done in a, the process which has been established over the years, over the decades, cannot be automated in one go. But the vision of a, leader, the vision of the supply chain leadership should be framed in such a manner that will I mean, that would clarify, that would, I mean, what I would say, that would unknot the they should focus on digitalization basically, right from the supplier till supplier of the supplier, the person who is purchasing it, to the customer experience. Every thing should be synchronized and automated, especially the manufacturing thing should have an automation. I mean, at least we should try in that perspective. I'll give you an example. One of the I think one of the biggest firms, I won't take the name, in India, they applied, drones to deliver products. Because see, from a pharma, if I take consideration to the pharma perspective, what happens is the end customer who is getting that medicine, at least in India, what happens, they are not trackable. They are not person, we cannot track them. Where the medicines are there or not, we cannot track, right? So I mean, we cannot track in the sense, like, we don't know how the delivery chain would work. So if the delivery from physical delivery, if we go to drones, if companies can apply drones in that case, that would be good. Because you know how much demand a particular region, where it is entirely unstructured, you can at least track. And other point is integration of technology from manufacturing to the end line. In fact, what I know is, reverse supply chain works in pharma, right? I mean, the drugs in India which are not there, I mean, which are not used or expired, they need to be picked up. So in those things also, what we can do, what the companies can do, enhance the process through digital methods. Maybe there, say for example, I'm staying in the part of West Bengal, but in, say, in Calcutta, we can they can make a hub. I'm just trying to give an example. So that would help to reverse the when you go to the reverse process, that would help out for the companies. I think that would be beneficial. This kind of a,
Thank
it's an amalgamation, I would say, physical digital process and human efforts in the sense like motivated individuals. And also I think the farms that I mean the challenges, this is a absolutely different thing which we saw during the COVID. Mostly, I mean, workmen were affected. If you see Chinese like scenario, or in different ports. So I mean, so I think companies should also focus on the health of the workforce, so that the supply, the main one of the key parameters in the supply chain, the workforce should also get some motivation, security, etc.
you, Jyotimal, for this summary of points. And to add on, Christian, I think you mentioned already some quite important points in your presentation. So what do you think is the most important challenges that pharmaceutical companies currently look at in the supply chain topics?
Yeah, I would try to stay on the microeconomic level, and I think after thinking of all the, let's say, disease symptoms that I have been talking about, it comes down to, a lot of it comes down to risk management in procurement and in better strategic procurement also in the smaller companies. This costs money because, I mean, if you look how procurement is organized in smaller, medium-sized companies, it's very often, let's say, something end of the pipe. The manufacturing department just throws the needs over to the procurement folks, and they try to solve it and to buy it somewhere, and maybe also buy it next year, buy it cheaper. And this is a complete, let's say, anachronistic approach to procurement. And this leads us into exactly these terrible situations that we are facing now, where we haven't really looked at the supplier market, at the risks that certain suppliers have, intrinsic risks that they have, intrinsic risks of territories where suppliers sit in. Do we want to have this supplier for this item in our own country, maybe in the next village, or do we want to go out and buy it in China? Can we do it? Do we have management? And all these, let's say, management, typical management assessments of procurement-related questions, that's something I think we can do much better. We can do much more of. And then we should also be able to mitigate these risks better on the midterm.
Wonderful. Great. So I think adding on to this, conversation, my next question, Jatinma, is that what is the impact you see? Of course, we are discussing today supply chain. COVID was supposed to be gone. Yes, it is going slowly and steadily, but now there is war in Ukraine. So overall, in general, without discussing any political stuff, how do you see, this post-COVID and also now war coming in? What are your ideas on how we will handle this? What is the impact on this two situation coming together?
Yeah, I mean, um, I mean, the point is, this is basically a geopolitical problem. Okay, the classic example of geopolitical problem. I won't stick to pharma in this case, but I'll cite an example.
Sure.
Uh, you know, in Russia and I mean this region, Russia and Ukraine, they are the highest producers of, I mean, exporters of aluminium. Okay, perhaps Ukraine. And the point what I want to make is this geopolitical tension is pretty massive. In this sense, like when the world runs shorts of aluminium imports, which Russia does, what will happen? We will run short of electronics. That means chips would be unavailable, and that is one of the reasons. If you can, I won't take the name, but one of the famous companies in US, they are like postponing their release of the phone, and this is probably one of the reasons, because semiconductors would be highly scarce. Also, uh, I think probably 30% of 20 to 30% of global like sunflower oil comes from Russia. And what is happening? And now, as we see, like Indonesia has has restricted their palm oil export. So what is happening in India? The rise of like sunflower oil has almost doubled. And in that sense, US markets and also European markets are taking a toll. Even if you see the gas supply, I mean, although Europe hasn't like restricted the gas supply from Russia, but just imagine if that is restricted by some reason, geopolitical reason, what will happen? I mean, the will I mean, you cannot imagine, I mean, the severity of the situation. So
So
I
inflation
think,
is happening. Yeah.
I mean, geopolitical.
Go ahead, Jyotirmoy.
Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, sure. Please continue.
Yeah, the voice is perhaps breaking a little. Yeah. So, what my point is, like, on a policy level or on a ethical level, I would say we should minimize. We as humans, as a global society, should try to understand that, like, war is no solution. Diplomacy is, certainly, and we should try to like uh, restrict, so that if one impact in one country happens, it impacts the entire globe. So we should be more responsible in that sense. Like you said, Mr. Chatterjee and Dr. Christian, you said that quality cannot be compromised on price, right? So here more of a, from a business mentality, the ethical mentality comes into play. Because after all, when a person is sick, he doesn't know, I mean, it's what he wishes is like recovery. So that is how I think, what the point what I want to make is, be more ethical in every standards, and that is how we can end up this kind of geopolitical tension.
Thank you. Christian, you want to add something? You're raising hand. You're fine.
For me, it's difficult to speak about war
Of course.
because you are in God's hand. Once
Correct.
it comes to war, who can predict?
Correct. So I think, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
and we
Christian.
already we always have wars all over the globe. It's Europe. Okay, that's a new thing.
Correct.
I do think we'll see long impacts from this war, but I do think if we can overcome, I'm optimist. If we overcome COVID impacts and restructure the industry around the new situation, we will also be able to do that post-war. Yes.
Wonderful. So yeah, I also feel the same. There has to be some kind of collaboration. We should not depend always on the long, lengthy contracts. It should be pragmatic. Because if you remember, Christian and Jyotirmay and Mario, when COVID started, then, a lot of, people, I mean, just an example, we had this all GDPR in Europe, right? All kind of privacies and all that. But suddenly when COVID started, people scrambled, how to make the interaction with the physicians, because somehow doctor has to see the patients. Now, of course, the sales force has to visit doctors, and that time lot of policies were relaxed, and in a similar way, I think, all the policy makers are now fine tuning themselves, and there is a kind of, let's say, pragmatism, like never before. Of course, privacy have to be respected, but the pragmatism has followed in, because we are into this flight of uncertainty, and in the flight of uncertainty, as you said, everybody is impacted, and so the policymakers, government, industry, everybody is now thinking little bit outside of box. With that, over to you, Mario, for the next question.
Thanks so much for these considerations. I think there were several important topics in there. I think flexibility is always a good point to make. However, as we all know, our industry, the pharmaceutical industry, is not the most flexible industry for the regulations we have, for also the tender supply that we have. We also mentioned this in the question session to Christian's presentation. So I think for many years, especially the generic industry has been driven by cost pressure. So a lot of manufacturing has shifted to Southeast Asia, namely to India. Now also China plays a major role in the manufacturing, still much more in the active ingredient section, and also more in the finished product segment. So we have seen now even the impact, Jyotirmay lined it out, from this conflict in Europe that we are facing currently. So now we see also in China that there's a lot of stringent lockdowns still, which makes it difficult to use the Chinese harbors to export the active ingredients, which will then go along the line. So how do you see this? The impact of China particularly is very important, I think, also in the pharmaceutical industry, and how to overcome these, let's say, strong dependency from big countries, which basically we cannot predict what will happen. So we thought we're living in a predictable and safe world, but it seems that there might be bigger challenges along the way. So how do you think companies can address that and perhaps get less dependent on these macroeconomic impacts?
Yeah, I mean, see, we are basically globalized, right? And the point what I want to make is, although we are globalized, as you said, like the focus is like some products in some countries. That is basically a concentration. I mean, if you see the demographics of this business, the point is some, say for example, say 8 to 7 countries are on the top level, and certainly China is amongst them. They are leaders in production of like APIs, chemicals, semiconductors, every aspect. But post the COVID has taught us one thing: we cannot be dependent on a single source. See, this is globalization. Earlier, what used to happen is regionalization. Only focus was on a particular region, and that resulted in less diverse products. We didn't have that kind of a diverse product in that sense. But now we have huge amount of products, but again, only the from regional to concentration of global, from local region to a globalized place has shifted, but it hasn't been spreaded all across the globe. So I think the focus should be, yeah, we would in a globalized economy would be dependent on countries like China, but our local manufacturer or local production should also say something. Because I was just saying this point in my presentation as well, like during 70s and 80s, almost only 1% of API is we in India used to import. But then globalization came, and 70% of the business is coming, APIs are coming from China. That means if by some reason, some disruption that is blocked, that means the health of our nation, health of our people, the customers are being affected. So we should try to mitigate that, keep a balance among that, so that there shouldn't be, at least for pharma, etc., which is very critical, life sciences and pharma. I think the balance should be drawn. Actually, we should frame that kind of a strategy. The company should think on those lines, those strategies, where there would be a sustainable, which would be sustainable, and there would be a balance.
Thank you for this, Jyotirmay, for your opinion. And Christian, do you have something to add on this point?
I see the vulnerability, I see the interdependence, and I think that's not healthy. because it's been as mentioned, it's too monolithic. We all depend on China. India depends on China. Europe depends on India, and their dependence on China is underlying. And the crazy health system in Europe is depending on cheap medication made in India and China, and will completely blow out of the window if something goes wrong in the supply chains. So it's such a fragile system. It's so unhealthy. It must change. But you tell me how to do that. It cannot be done by the politics, because if the politics get involved, it's going to be messed up at the end. It's far too complex to be regulated from a central body. So we need to stepwise over the next 25, maybe 50 years, start to diversify this landscape again. And pray until then, pray that nothing goes wrong, that no major war cuts down to further supply chains. I think that's all. I'm praying, in my answer. Sorry.
Thank you, Christian, for this point. I think this is a very good word. So as we already came also to the end of our time that we had for the roundtable, I think as you lined out, it's a topic that, of course, we cannot solve in half an hour here. I think for myself, I take away that diversifying the supply chain is a very important topic. I think also a lot of pharmaceutical companies are going this way of adding additional API sources to their dossiers and trying to establish different manufacturing ways. Of course, Christian, you also are working in this segment. I think this is quite important for pharmaceutical companies to get diversified. And of course, price pressure is always a challenge, as we learned. We are pretty much looking forward. I think also Kutso, she did it clear or made it clear in her presentation that sustainability, of course, is a trend that also pharmaceutical companies cannot ignore, even though there are stringent price policies. So it will stay an interesting area to watch out. And as Christian said, let's pray that everything works well. And thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Do you have some more observations, Kuntal, to close the round?
Well, thank you. I think, you have said it all. Mario, Christian, Jyotirmay, I think it has been a wonderful privilege, and also to Kutso, for the presentation, for the talks. I think, future lies in this unpredictable situation, but as we all are praying and doing, with this positivity, with this collaboration, looking forward to welcoming you all in the future, conferences, pharmaceutical conference at Pharmacircuit. Thank you all.
Thank you, and see you in the networking session if you want. You can connect to a one-to-one to some further participants. So I'm looking forward to see you there.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.